What is up, everybody? My name is Katie Mack, and this is episode 1 of Tailgate Talks. For a little bit of background on me, I've been an athlete my entire life. I just finished up my college athletics career in February of this past year. Hooey, it's almost been a year since I retired. Time flies, right? But I was a swimmer. I swam at the University of Florida and the University of Tennessee, the latter of which where I got my master's degree in journalism. And I am super, super excited to be here and to be talking about sports with you guys. Now, in terms of what we're going to talk about on here, we're going to talk about everything. I love, talking about women's sports and just how far women's sports have come in the last couple of years and just how much they've grown and kind of where they're going. But we're also going to talk about the classics. I love talking football. I love talking baseball, and I love talking hockey. So today, we're just going to focus on MLB and college football. We've got some major MLB offseason moves that have gone on in the last couple of weeks, this week in specific, and then also going forward. And then, college football had all of their conference championships last week, which were pretty significant. I was actually at the not Florida. I keep wanting to say Florida because I went to the University of Florida, but I was actually at the Georgia-Texas SEC championship game. I was on the sideline for the entire game, which was an insane experience. So we're definitely going to talk about that one. And then we're also going to go over the college football bracket, college football playoff bracket, and just, everything that's going on there and just my opinion on whether they made the right decision, because the college football playoff was so controversial last year. So without further ado, let's get into it for today. And let's get started with MLB offseason moves. Now, the biggest move and the biggest question of our offseason was, where was Juan Soto going to land? And we finally have that answer. So he signed a 15-year, $765 million deal with the Mets. Now, he was in talks with the Red Sox, Yankees, Dodgers, and Blue Jays, but the final two contenders were the Mets and Yankees. The Yankees offer was $760 million, so just $5 million short of what he ended up accepting with the Mets. Now, evidently, there was a little bit of drama behind the scenes. I don't know if it was the, drama or if it was the money. I'm betting it was 100% the money, but, the drama always plays a part, right? But don't quote me on these rumors, but evidently some Yankees staff kicked Soto's family members off of the field during a Yankees event. And in addition, Soto wanted a free suite at Yankee Stadium, which is something that the Yankees have never offered any player ever before. Derek Jeter paid for his own suite. Aaron Judge pays for his own suite. And so the Yankees were not budging on including that in Soto's contract. Now, the word on the street is that was included in his Mets contract, but neither here nor there. Ignore all the drama. This is a super, super interesting sign, because Soto, with this, he becomes the highest paid athlete in MLB history, and I think the highest paid athlete overall ever. The only other athlete even close to him is Shohei Ohtani at $700 million with the Dodgers. Now, I'm going to pull up this list of the top 10 current contracts in baseball, just to kind of give you an idea of like where we're at right now. Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani are at the top. $765 million to $700 million. And then right after that, we have a very steep drop off. So Aaron Judge then comes in with $360 million, Bryce Harper, $330 million. And then we've got a series of pitchers thereafter, all in the $300 million range. And then Machado, Turner, and Bogarts thereafter. Now, I think it's fair to do a little bit of a comparison between Ohtani and Soto, because they do have the highest contracts in baseball. Soto is 26. He just signed a $765 million 15-year deal. Now, last year when Ohtani entered free agency, he signed a $700 million 10-year deal at 29. Now, this past year, Soto batted .288 with 41 home runs, and Ohtani batted .310 with 54 home runs, and was the first player ever to reach the 50 home run and 50 stolen bases milestone in a single season. Now, when you look at that, their stats are not significantly different, but the other piece to consider here is that Ohtani signed as a two-way player. And although he didn't pitch this last season due to a UCL injury and just that recovery and surgery process, he is expected to pitch this season at some point. Now, the question here is, does Soto really deserve $765 million, or are the Mets massively overpaying? Personally, I'm leaning towards overpaying a little bit. He's not a two-way player like Shohei Ohtani. He's an average outfielder at best, hot take. And he actually made quite a few errors that, were costly for the Yankees last season. But I think the main takeaway in this whole situation is that in terms of free agency, age is everything. Given that Soto's contract was $65 million more than Ohtani's, and I would argue Ohtani at this stage is a much better ball player, much more well-rounded ball player than Soto is. But Soto signed at 26, Ohtani signed at 29 when they entered free agency, right? Now, neither here nor there, but for the other teams that were interested in Soto, like the Dodgers and Red Sox in particular, I'm super, super relieved that they weren't throwing any money at Soto. My personal opinion is that both of those teams need to spend way more money building up their bullpens. The Dodgers have already gotten started with that on signing Blake Snell, which was a huge get, but more on that later. Now, moving on to the second big free agent move of this week, Max Fried to the Yankees. Now, losing out on paying Soto a $760 million contract actually worked out really, really well for the Yankees, as they had the money to put towards Fried and, filling some significant holes. Now, they signed Max Fried on a $218 million 8-year contract. And this is significant because the deal includes no referrals or opt-outs and is the richest contract ever given to a left-hand pitcher. And it's the fourth largest in history. Now, Fried was previously with the Braves, and he will join Yankees ace Garrett Cole and star closer Luke Weaver and a handful of other really, really spectacular Yankee pitchers as well. He has an average ERA of 2.81 for his last 5 years in Atlanta and is a two-time All-Star. Now, the good news here is that by not blowing all their money on Soto, the Yanks were actually able to pick up Max Fried and hopefully round out the rest of their lineup with some other standouts. Now, they also reportedly have their eyes on trades for Cardinals third baseman Nolan Arenado, Cubs center fielder Cody Bellinger, and are going after free agents Christian Walker and reliever Tanner Scott. Now, another big offseason move. This was a trade, Garrett Crochet to the Red Sox. So the White Sox traded Garrett Crochet for 4 of the Red Sox's biggest prospects. Not quite their biggest. They didn't trade away Roman Anthony or any of their, very, very top ones, but still some pretty significant names here. We've got catcher Kyle Teal, MLB top 125th prospect, outfielder Braden Montgomery, Boston's 5th ranked prospect, infield Chase Meadroth, Boston's 11th ranked prospect, and then right-hand pitcher Wilkman Gonzalez, which is their 14th ranked prospect. Now, in terms of Crochet, last year was his first season in a starting rotation after transitioning out of a reliever role. He pitched 146 innings last year with 209 strikeouts and only 33 walks with an overall 3.58 ERA. This is a huge pickup for the Red Sox, who had the second worst overall ERA at 4.04 in the American League East last season, only ahead of the Blue Jays, who were 4.29. Now, a couple other key points to touch on. Wanted to briefly talk about Corbin Burnes. He has not made a decision yet, but I think it will be interesting because Max Fried's contract and how high he signed for might set the standard for what Corbin Burnes is ultimately going to sign for. Now, Burnes was only with Baltimore for one season, where he posted a 2.92 ERA in 2024 at the age of 30. Before that, he was with the Brewers for 4 seasons, posting a 2.94 ERA across all 4 of those seasons with 125 starts, and he also won the 2021 Cy Young Award with Milwaukee. Now, Baltimore has not historically been a big spending team in terms of free agents, but their new owner, David Rubenstein, was reportedly talking about spending big on this offseason. Now, back to Burnes. As of November 27th, the Giants had significant interest in him, having just lost Blake Snell to the Dodgers. But MLB insiders are predicting that Corbin Burnes' contract will be at least $200 million, which might be a number for the Giants and the Orioles to compete with. Either way, Orioles need to build up their pitching rotation affordably while not compromising any of the money that has to go to star players like Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman. Couple others, Astros are considering trading Kyle Tucker. He is approaching free agency in the next year. And I think that they're considering just, trying to trade away and, maintain some of that value without losing him, in a year. So a couple of the teams that are interested, Yankees, Cubs, Giants, Phillies. Alex Bregman is also one of the biggest free agents still left on the market. Astros, Red Sox, Yankees, and Tigers are interested in him. And another point to talk about is how Milwaukee exercised the Rule 5 draft at the winter meetings. They pulled Cardinals AAA pitcher Connor Thomas, 2.8 ERA, who mostly worked out of the bullpen this past season. I think this is a huge get. I think this will be really, really interesting to see how well he does at the major league level. They also pulled left-hand relief pitcher Grant Wolfram from the Rangers farm system. Grant was drafted in 2018. He has yet to make a major league debut, 3.13 ERA and 69 strikeouts in the last season. And I think that he battled some injuries kind of building up, but if he can stay healthy, he's definitely going to be a major get for Milwaukee. Now, moving on to college football, let's chat a little bit about the outcomes of some of these conference championships. Now, let me take my baseball down now that we're switching. There we go. Go back to my notes. So Big Ten, Oregon 45, Penn State 37. Not particularly surprising. Oregon's been the number one team all season long. So for them to come out with the win here, I mean, that was pretty much expected. I didn't actually watch this game because I was on the sideline for the Georgia-Texas game. So missed this one a little bit, but seeing Oregon come out on top doesn't really surprise me. And they are the number one seed in the college football playoff. Again, unsurprisingly. Now, ACC, Clemson 34, SMU 31. This one was a little surprising to me on a couple notes. I was surprised that Clemson got out to an early lead. I want to say the first time I turned on the game was 8 minutes to go in the first quarter, and Clemson was already up 14-0. So, definitely had a strong first half, but the even better part was how strong SMU was on the second half. Just coming back and really, really putting up a fight and really, really making Clemson work for that victory. Now, both of those teams are in the college football playoff, which I think was the right call. Now, let's talk SEC. Let's talk Georgia, Texas. Georgia 22, Texas 19. This was one hell of a game. And I'm not just saying that because I was on the sideline. It was an incredible game. Now, first SEC champs in history where there were no touchdowns in the first half. Both quarterbacks were really, really struggling to move the ball. There was a lot going on. Defense was sloppy at certain points. But let's talk about the QBs just for a sec. UT first. Quinn Ewers did not play a horrible game. It wasn't his best, but was it horrible? No. I was a little bit surprised that Arch Manning didn't go in the game at all. Not necessarily in the sense that I think that Arch could have done a better job than Quinn in those settings, but I think just in the element of surprise and trying to throw the other team a little bit of a curveball and just try to do something different when, Quinn's really having a hard time. I'm surprised that Steve Sarkisian did not even attempt to, try something different with Arch throughout the stretch of that game, just because there was a lot going on either side and both teams were struggling. So that was, something that I questioned throughout. Now, moving on to Georgia, you never wish ill upon anyone or hope for injuries ever. And I really, really hope that Carson Beck is okay and rehabbing and healing and everything. But I will say him leaving the game was probably the best thing that happened to Georgia, because I believe that if he had stayed in, Georgia would not have won that game. Gunnar Stockton played lights out. Gunnar Stockton was him. He goes in at the beginning of the third quarter. His first drive takes it all the way down the field for a touchdown. It's the first touchdown of the entire game on either side. And I remember watching this. I was watching this from the Texas sideline. So I was on the Texas sideline towards their end zone. So Georgia was going this way from where I was standing. And they move so fast, and two, I'm watching the Georgia sideline from the Texas side. The Texas sideline was quiet the whole game, by the way. There was no energy over there, but just watching like how the energy was before Gunnar went in versus after, I mean, it was insane. Like, people were up on their feet, they were yelling, like they were so energized when Gunnar Stockton went in this game. And it's funny because Coach Smart talked about this at the end of the game in his press conference and stuff. And he was like, oh my gosh, we love Gunnar, the team loves Gunnar. They respect him. He's such a great leader, like and all this stuff. But he didn't even need to say it because you could see it. You could see how the team responded when Gunnar went in. You could see how, his offense just like they rallied around him and just worked like so much harder to just, put him in positions to make plays and stuff like that. Right. So that was really, really cool to see. I mean, his toughness was just inspiring. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw that insane hit that he had in overtime. It was the play right before the play that won the game. 2nd and 8, he rushes the ball. He collides straight on with a Texas defender and his helmet goes flying off. He flies backwards, holds onto the ball for dear life, and immediately pops up. And I think that there was a lot of concern of like, oh my God, is he injured? Like, did he get a concussion? He's on his feet in a matter of like 3 seconds. Right. And so I just think that like, he was what Georgia needed in that moment, and like MVP of the game in my book, 100%. Georgia would not have taken that win if not for Gunnar Stockton. So props to Gunnar Stockton. If Carson Beck, moving on to another topic, if Carson Beck doesn't come back in, the rest of the season, and there are talks of that, his family is currently getting a second opinion on his arm, shoulder, elbow injury situation, whatever's going on. We don't really have a ton of details on it yet, but his family's getting a second opinion on it. So maybe he'll be able to come back. But if he doesn't, Gunnar Stockton has his work cut out for him. But that Georgia team looked really, really special when Gunnar Stockton was at the helm. So props to him. Congrats to him and the rest of the Georgia team. But overall, just being there, it was so cool to just kind of watch these different storylines play out. Georgia had already beaten Texas in the regular season. It was Texas's only loss. It was considered a major upset, and all that. While Texas is the first team to make it to the SEC championships in their first season in the conference, they really had something to prove after that loss to Georgia. This was a revenge game for them. And yet here, the Bulldogs were really considered the underdogs. Texas was widely considered the much better team, being 11-1 with their only loss being to Georgia, while Georgia was 11-2 with only losses to Bama and Ole Miss, both teams that did not end up making the college football playoff. But yeah, I mean, it was so cool to see how that all shook out and just see the outcome of the game. And just, I believe from the start of the game, I was rooting for Georgia. Personally, I feel like it's blasphemy to say as somebody who graduated from Florida and Tennessee, but I was rooting for Georgia, and I was rooting for Georgia because OGSEC, whatever. And I could tell from the start of the game that was the better prepared team. Even with Carson Beck in the game for the first half, where it was a little bit stagnant on both sides, better prepared team, more excited team, and it just went off the charts the minute Stockton went in. So really exciting game, really excited about that outcome. I mean, that was a spectacular win for Georgia. Now, Big 12, ASU 45, Iowa State 19. I wasn't particularly surprised by this. ASU has looked pretty strong all season long. So excited to see them pull it out over Iowa State for that win. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the college football playoff. I have one major point here, which is that I think the college football playoff committee did the right thing in terms of their current standards that they've laid out. However, I do think that going through and just seeing how the teams shake out will reveal a lot. because a lot of, analysts and head coaches, and I believe Commissioner Sankey with the SEC has talked about this a little bit, of just how do you incorporate, evaluating the strength of schedule in selections, right? Because as of right now, the college football playoff is giving a lot of weight to the conference champions, which I think is fair, because if you're not including conference champions, then how are you really evaluating, right? But I think that strength of schedule has to be considered somehow. I don't know how that they incorporate it without pissing somebody off, because as we saw last year, somebody is going to inevitably be pissed off about not getting in, But I think they did the right thing based off of their current standards, but I think they'll have to reevaluate after this season, because I think that when you look at this bracket, there's a lot of teams that had an easier path to the playoffs than others. All schedules are not created equal. I think a lot of the SEC teams had it really, really hard. I think you have a handful of other SEC teams, and not just SEC. I think, Miami, South Carolina as well, could make an argument for being in this bracket as well. Now, people will argue for Alabama. Oh, what about Alabama? What about Alabama? I think they made the right call by not putting Alabama in, because Alabama did not help themselves when they lost to unranked Oklahoma on the road. Now, you can sit here and argue about this till you're blue in the face, but I do think it's a fact that there are teams that did not make this bracket that can beat teams that are in this bracket. Now, how do you evaluate that going forward? Who knows? But I do think that this first 12-team playoff will reveal a lot, and maybe the committee will be able to take that information and learn from it, and just refine this going forward. So really excited to see how this all shakes out. Really, really excited to see the bowl games and just kind of what goes on with all of those. But thank you guys so much for watching. It's been a blast, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys back here again next week. Thank you so much again.